Welcome to the Deep Dive, and a big hello to everyone tuning in on the Volture Podcast channel, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. If you want to keep up with the latest in tech, innovation trends, well, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit subscribe on the channel and maybe give this a like. We've got a lot more analyses like this one coming, plus our regular deep dives into interesting books too.
And today we're really getting into something quite serious, actually. It's at that crossroads of, global competition and, human well-being.
Yeah.
We're looking at the intense pressures on people driving AI research, especially in the whole US-China tech race situation. And then we're broadening out, looking at the well-being of people in demanding academic research settings more generally.
Exactly. We've got some sources that really shed light on this. First up, some recent, frankly quite alarming news reports about the premature deaths of several top Chinese AI scientists. These reports are suggesting a pretty direct link between, their passing and the enormous work pressure, which seems to be fueled by this AI tech competition between China and the US. And then, to kind of give us that wider angle on the stress brilliant people face in demanding fields, we're digging into an academic paper. The systematic review looked at postgraduate student health over, 20 years?
That's right, 2 decades. So the mission today really is to understand the human cost, the cost behind this relentless push for tech advancement and academic success, and to see if there are echoes, similarities between these two worlds that might seem quite different on the surface.
Okay, so let's start with the AI research side of things. What exactly is going on there based on these reports?
Well, the news reports from April 2025, they paint a pretty stark picture. They detail 5 prominent Chinese AI scientists who tragically passed away prematurely between 2022 and 2025.
In just a few years.
Yes. And crucially, the reports aren't treating these as, completely isolated incidents. They're suggesting a link, a strong one, to intense work pressure. And that pressure is framed very much within this context of the field's AI tech rivalry with the US. It really makes you stop and think about the human stakes, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And we saw that buzz recently, didn't we? About DeepSeek, that Chinese AI model. The headlines were all about it outperforming OpenAI's ChatGPT on the App Store, but using way less computing power.
Right.
That alone just highlights the kind of pressure cooker environment these researchers must be in.
All right.
Not just keeping up, but trying to leapfrog the competition. Why is that compute power thing such a big deal?
Well, that's key. In this kind of tech race, efficiency is everything.
Yeah.
Using less compute power means, lower cost to run the AI. It makes it more accessible, maybe faster to deploy. So if you can beat a major player like ChatGPT and use fewer resources, that's a massive signal of technological advantage. It just ramps up the pressure on everyone else to do the same, or better. It's a race for smarter and more efficient AI.
I see. And compounding this, we know the U.S. has put restrictions on things like technology transfers, access to advanced semiconductors for China. How does that specifically make things even tougher for these scientists?
Well, those restrictions create a huge bottleneck. Advanced chips, semiconductors, they're the absolute backbone of modern AI. You need them for training these huge, complex models. So by limiting China's access, the US essentially forces Chinese researchers to innovate on multiple fronts at once, not just the AI algorithms themselves, but also developing their own chip design, their own manufacturing capabilities.
Wow.
It just adds another layer of urgency and sheer complexity to their work.
Yeah, I can imagine. The reports quote a Chinese computer scientist, Liu Xiaoshan. He apparently said the industry is developing too fast and the competition is very fierce. And he mentioned researchers are constantly afraid of being scooped, beaten to publication. It sounds exhausting.
It does. And this race to publish, while understandable in one sense, it raises questions, doesn't it?
Like what?
Well, like how it might impact the actual quality and rigor of the research. If the main focus is just speed, getting it out there first, is there a risk of cutting corners, maybe overlooking flaws, or not fully thinking through the implications?
Right. The pressure to be first could potentially overshadow the need for careful, thorough work.
Exactly, which is fundamental for solid scientific progress. And on top of the scientific pressure, there's also the ethical dimension, especially in AI.
How so?
Well, AI practitioners are dealing with technology that has profound societal impacts, right? That adds another layer of ethical pressure and responsibility that maybe isn't quite the same in all research fields.
That makes sense. And these reports, they actually name some of the scientists who passed away. It really, it personalizes the tragedy when you hear about their specific work.
It does. It's important to remember these were real people making significant contributions. For instance, Sun Jian. He died in June 2022, only 45. He was chief scientist at Megvii Technology. They're big in image recognition, deep learning. He'd been at Microsoft Research before that, worked on key tech like ShuffleNet, Brain++, and really foundational stuff for AI vision.
Just 45. And then Feng Yang died July 2023, even younger, 38.
Yes, a military AI expert, an associate professor at the National University of Defense Technology. He developed AI for military simulations, things called War Skull 1 and 2. That really underscores the high-stakes nature of some AI research, and you can only imagine the pressure involved there.
And Teng Zhao, founder of SenseTime, the facial recognition giant.
Right. He passed in 2023, age 55, also a professor, and another one with a background at Microsoft Research Asia. His work was crucial in taking AI vision from the lab into, widespread use.
Then there was He Zi, died 2024, 41 years old, co-founder of Yudu Tech.
Focused on AI in healthcare, digitalization, another vital area. And the most recent one mentioned is Quan Yui, who died just this January 2025, only 39, an expert in computer image processing at South China University of Technology, researching computational photography, unsupervised learning, really cutting-edge stuff.
It's just striking how young they all were, really at the peak or just hitting the peak of their careers.
It is. And another point the articles make is that many of them had actually studied in the U.S. before returning to China.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it speaks to how global science talent is, but it also kind of raises questions, doesn't it? Like what differences in research culture or maybe expectations might have contributed to the pressures they faced back home. The reports do mention concerns about personal safety and just the overall stressful research environment.
So, okay, intense pressure, global competition, geopolitical factors, rapid innovation pace. It's a potent mix. Now, let's shift gears slightly. You mentioned that systematic review on postgraduate student health. First off, what exactly is a systematic review? Why is that a good way to look at this?
Right, so a systematic review is basically a very rigorous way to gather and synthesize evidence. Researchers set clear rules beforehand, find all the relevant studies on a specific topic, in this case, postgraduate student health between 2001 and 2021, evaluate their quality, and then combine the findings. It gives you a really comprehensive evidence-based overview. It's powerful for spotting broad trends, common problems.
Okay, so what did this review find regarding master's and doctoral students?
Well, the findings were frankly quite concerning. It confirmed that these students experience really significant levels of stress, anxiety, and depression.
Yeah, that probably doesn't surprise anyone who's been through grad school or knows someone who has. What were the main things causing this stress, the main symptoms?
The review pointed to mostly psychological symptoms. Things like malaise, feeling anguish, intense worry, tension, and very commonly, sleep problems. As for causes, the heavy research workload and that constant pressure to publish were major culprits. Sound familiar?
Very familiar, yeah.
Yeah.
Echoes of the AI situation.
Exactly. Also, the relationship with their academic advisor, that was a big factor. Difficulties with the research topic itself, juggling multiple tasks, deadlines, time pressure. It's all in there. It's striking how closely these academic pressures mirror the demands we just talked about with the AI scientists. The intense focus, the need for results, the deadlines.
Absolutely. Did the review mention money worries or, anxiety about getting a job afterwards?
It did, yes. Financial resources or lack thereof, and concerns about performance, doubts about professional insertion, basically, finding a relevant job after graduation. Those were definitely contributing factors.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Even if AI researchers get potentially huge salaries, does that actually compensate for that kind of relentless pressure? Especially when grad students often face such an uncertain path financially.
That's a really important point. Money helps, obviously, but it doesn't necessarily erase the impact of chronic stress on your mental and physical health. The review also noted something interesting about Brazil specifically, where much of the reviewed research seemed to originate. It pointed out that while postgraduate programs expanded rapidly there between 2011 and 2020, the support systems for student well-being didn't really keep pace. They also highlighted regional gaps, more programs in the Southeast and South, fewer, and presumably less support in the North and Central West.
So more students, but not enough support infrastructure.
Pretty much. The study authors were quite blunt, actually. They concluded that postgraduate education, as it often exists, can actively contribute to student illness. They made a strong call for more specialized psychological support within universities, within these programs, and just for more open conversation about the whole issue.
Beyond just saying stress, anxiety, depression, did the review get into more specific health problems, physical or mental?
Yes, it did. Psychologically, it wasn't just general stress, but findings related to specific anxiety disorders, clinical depression. Physically, students reported things like frequent headaches, high blood pressure, muscle pain, even eating disorders. And perhaps not surprisingly, they found links between high stress and coping mechanisms like smoking more, drinking more alcohol, becoming more sedentary.
Wow, that paints a bleak picture.
It does, and emotionally there was a heavy burden. Lots of negative feelings reported: sadness, loneliness, fear, anger, despair, frustration, disappointment, often outweighing positive ones. This was often tied to fatigue and the sheer stress of it all, leading to frustration with the course itself and worries about their career. The researchers used this phrase, describing the postgraduate workload as a limit situation.
A limit situation.
Yeah, implying it pushes students toward the threshold where the risk of illness significantly increases. They even cited another study showing master's and doctoral students perceive their quality of life as lower than undergraduates do.
So when we pull these two threads together, the intense AI research world driven by global competition and this demanding postgraduate academic environment, we're seeing some pretty clear parallels in the types of pressure, aren't we?
Absolutely. The parallels are undeniable. It's the intensity, the competition, the deadlines, the constant need for innovation or publication, the huge personal investment required. In both cases, when the environment becomes hyper-competitive or lacks adequate support, it seems to take a serious toll on well-being.
And while we talked about the unique ethical pressures in AI, maybe that's just one example of how any field pushing boundaries creates its own specific stressors. The geopolitical stuff adds a layer for the AI scientists, just like, say, funding cuts or changing university policies might impact grad students.
Precisely. It all points towards a bigger question about sustainability, really. Can these high-pressure systems continue indefinitely without addressing the well-being of the people within them? What are the long-term costs, not just to the individuals, but to scientific and technological progress itself?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? This has been incredibly insightful, looking at the human cost behind the cutting edge. It really hammers home that pushing boundaries needs to go hand in hand with supporting the brilliant minds doing the pushing. Thank you so much for unpacking all of that with us.
My pleasure. It's an important conversation to have.
And thanks to all of you for joining us for this deep dive. If you found this valuable, food for thought, please do subscribe to the Volture channel. Give the podcast a like. We've got plenty more in-depth discussions on tech, innovation, trends, plus those book analyses coming your way. We really hope you'll join us next time.